Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our workshop, which certainly this year we must be breaking some kind of record on number of workshops in a given year. So I'd ask the clerk to give us a roll call, please.
This is a public workshop of the Citrus County Board of County Commissioners this 26th day of April 2022. In attendance are Chairman Ronald E. Kitchen Jr., First Vice Chair Ruthie Schlabach, Second Vice Chair Holly Davis, Commissioner Scott Carnahan and Jeff Kennard, County Administrator Randy Oliver, and County Attorney Denise A. Diamond-Lynn.
Thank you very much. Morning, Mr. Oliver.
Good morning.
Ready to take us away on this?
We're ready.
Okay.
This morning, we're here to talk about roads. And we're going to open up with the big horse in the room, as I call it. The issue isn't really the formula. I mean, obviously that's important because it has to be equitable and benefit the most people, but the real issue is funding. So Doug, if you can pull down the screen.
Well, we want to do you want a screen or TV? Which way you want to do it, Chairman?
Okay, you can do it on TV.
The people in the audience can see this.
As long as everybody can see, that's what counts.
Everybody see the screens? Great. All right.
Just tell me when to go to the next one.
Okay. Let's see. Next slide.
Uh-oh, I'm on the wrong side. My apologies. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so funding options or possible funding options are sales tax, ad valorem taxes. We have a transportation trust fund, and then special assessment on benefited properties. And I would note that some counties do it street by street. Marion is one that does it that way, and they have a number of people that work that program for them. I understand that some other counties do it as a county-wide MSBU. The direction that the board's given to this point was that during the preliminary FY 22-23 budget kickoff was to increase the millage rate 0.2 of a mil a year for 5 years, which will get us to the $10 million additional funding, which will put it at a funding level necessary to do that, provided that the funds were dedicated, restricted to residential road resurfacing. Okay, next slide. There always comes up a question as it relates to gas tax, and the Citrus County is higher than everybody else, and this gives you a table as to where everyone's at. As you can see, Sumter is the lowest, Levy is a penny lower, and all the other counties are the same and levying the maximum gas tax. Everybody on diesel fuel is identical. Next slide. Gas tax funding is dedicated to bonding for capital projects. 486, 491, both phases. But I will say this again, gas tax revenues are declining. It has to do with hybrids, electrics, cars become more fuel efficient, and the cost of fuel. Gas tax is so much per penny, it's not based on the cost of the fuel. And so consequently, it's not inflationary. FDOT predicts by 2024, which I think is pretty optimistic, that electric car sales will represent 40% of the new cars sold. So you can expect over a period of time that I think the gas tax will continue to dwindle. Okay, the next slide. This shows what we get in gas tax funding. The grant that we list over there is for SCOP funds. But this shows how these funds are applied, because everybody says, oh, these funds are not being spent for what they were intended for. But as you can see, this funds those particular things and it balances out, and it's been that way for the total time. So we just wanted to
Mr.
clear
Chairman.
up the total picture.
Excuse me, Randy. Yes,
Sure.
Commissioner Schlabach.
Randy, I was just curious, I was wondering if things like this, you know, the chart that says, you know, where we stand with the other counties and how we use this, is this on any of our social media? Or I think it'd be, you know, public education, because so many people say that, and I wasn't sure what, you know, Levy County was, or Hernando.
We can put it out there either on our website, or we can get Veronica to do a social media post on that, because a lot of times we get a lot of complaints about the fuel prices here are slightly higher than
Absolutely.
Marion, and
Yeah.
we have no control over fuel prices at all.
Yeah.
That's set by the various distributors and merchants that sell fuel, but we can do that.
Thank you.
Please
Thank you.
continue.
Okay. Sales tax, go to the one for sales tax revenue. Okay, sales tax revenue, the Department of Revenue indicates that a 1 cent sales tax would generate, we're saying 12 to 16 million. I would note that this year they're saying 20 million, which I think is a little aggressive with what they've done, but sales tax is very, what's called elastic, and consequently it can go up and down very quickly based on the strength of the economy. I've seen it go to 120% of what you projected. I've seen it go to 75% of what you projected. But you can tailor a local option sales tax, can be dedicated to road resurfacing, and it's based on the referendum that is approved by the citizens. This does require a referendum, and it must be in a general election. So it would have to be in November of '24 or November 26, if that's the way that the board wanted to alter direction.
Mr. Alden?
Yes.
I have kind of I don't know if anybody has the correct answer to this, but if you're talking about a half a cent sales tax, and I go to the store and spend $1, are they going to collect a half a penny from me, or are they going to collect a penny from me?
It'll be rounded.
Exactly. So what happens to the other half a cent?
Well, what'll happen is that if
I know in the bigger scheme of things, but it just seems to me, to the average consumer, that half of cent is not going to be a big deal breaker one way or the other. So if the board goes down this path, my thought was, rather than confusing it between a half a cent or a 1 cent or this or that, for what the difference is, it might be easier to keep all the formulas straight by either just sticking with a 1 cent, because that seems to be what the other counties pretty much do. But somebody pointed out to me, are you collecting 6.5 cents when I go out, or are you collecting 7 cents? And the answer, it seems to me, is it's going to be rounded up, right?
Well, yeah, it's 6.5 cents, but it's rounded. So if you buy something for $100, it's $6. It's based on.
Then it'll be $6.50, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if it was a penny, it'd be $7.
Right. So at $100, we're talking 50 cents, approximately, right? So that was my only point. So as we go through this discussion, I think the big picture is going to be, do we do it or don't we do it, and do the citizens want it or not? I think it's really kind of, that's kind of a very minor point, whether you get to the 6.5, the half or 1. So that's just my thought. I just threw that. Somebody asked me that question the other day. There was a movie once made where somebody went in and wrote a computer program where they had all the odd cents that nobody ever missed transferred to their account, right? And then one day, the day of reckoning came, and they wanted to know where all those odd cents went to. So I was just curious.
That was one of the first biggest cases of computer fraud. Somebody in a bank
Yep.
made it so all the penny rounding went into accounts that they had.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Schlegel.
So, when you collect it 6.5, and you're right, but it's not on every sale. It's going to be 0.40625.
Well, we're going to go through what it
Okay.
applies to.
But I
in the
mean, it's
next
not
slide.
every sale that you get that half a cent rounded up. It's after many sales, but it is that's a very good statement.
It's only rounded once in cumulative.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, who pays for the 1 cent? Next slide, Doug. Who pays for the 1 cent? Everyone's the answer. Obviously, tourists are a large part of our economy here. Estimates range from 18 to 25% as it relates to what tourists spend in money. This would go on hotel bills, restaurant things, but most things that tourists purchase in our community. Also, seasonal residents pay sales tax. Non-property owners pay sales tax. Business patrons, a retail establishment, and obviously residents. If resurfacing is funded by special assessment method, only the residents pay. So, let's talk a minute about what's exempt. Most groceries, excluding soda, candy, and deli foods, residential rent and mortgages, utilities, prescriptions, and new machinery, parts, equipment, and associated labor. Those are the broad general exemptions. Okay, next slide. How much will it add to my purchase? On propane, if it's $20, and this is the rounding issue that Commissioner Kitchen talked about, and it's $19.99, it'd be 20 cents. If it's coffee maker and it's $80, it's 80 cents. And as you can see, it goes on down. The one that I would point out, it's capped at $50. So if you buy a $36,000 vehicle in this particular example, it would be $50, even though that's, you know, it's not 1%. It's capped at 50. It's capped at that $50.
Mr. Oliver, just another point I'd like to make. When we had this discussion the first time around, and again, I see we're already rounding to 1 cent. So, right, this is with 1 penny, not a half a cent, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, the interesting thing was brought up the first go around, how many years ago that was that, well, people will go to other counties and buy their big purchase items. You know, instead of buying a car or a truck here in Citrus County, they'll go to a neighboring county. I talked to one of the biggest well-known car dealers in Citrus County, and they said they were all for it. And they said nobody is going to go to another county and take their business out of the county over $50. And I think that's a point, too, that needs to be brought up. So, again, I'm not in that business, but when I heard that objection raised, I went and asked about it, and that was the response I got. Now, I don't know if everybody agrees with that in the retail business, but that was one response.
The sales tax is based on the county that you're going to register the car in. Mm-hmm. So if you purchase it in Marion County, but you're going to register it in Citrus, they're going to collect the Citrus sales tax.
Right. And again, $50 on whatever, right? So, thank you.
Okay. So as I say, with the road issue, the issue is really a money problem. After that, it's just a question of how you divide what you have to meet the most, the needs of the greatest number of citizens and be the fairest, if you will. So any questions or comments as it relates to this part of the presentation? And I'm going to go into the formulas next.
Any questions, anyone? Okay, please continue.
Okay. Residential road resurfacing methodology. I'm going to go on current, and then I'm going to go on the formula. I would like to thank Charles in Public Works, who could not be here, who put this together with a little help in editing. But he does all of the formulas, and Charles does a great job on that and applying them fairly and equitably. Roads rated 7+ are sorted by density, okay, homes per foot of road. So if we have 2 roads of equal length above 7, so if you envision 2 pots, so if a road rates 7, 8, 9, or 10, it moves from this pot into this pot. And then this pot is then reallocated to base it on density. So if you have one house with 9 roads and they're of equal length, or 9 homes, and another one that has 10, the one with 10s pay first because it benefits the most citizens. The board has went through a couple of iterations of how they get there. That's the way that it's done. The only exception to that is Citrus Springs and the MSBU, and that has to do with a court settlement that the county reached before Denise and my time, but it's the Citrus Springs MSBU. It's worst to first, and density is not a factor when selecting these roads. The rationale behind that is that each lot pays the same amount, whether there's a house on it or not. Okay, so, and that was the crutch of this particular lawsuit that the county was involved with.
Mr. Oliver, I have another quick question.
Sure.
I'd just like to hear what the board thinks about this. I saw an email, I'm sure we all probably got it, but one person was proposing that we consider abandoning roads temporarily, that A, are at the high ranking category, and B, nobody lives on. And the argument was, and I've heard this in the past too, is that if I live, or somebody, there's a road out in the middle of nowhere that nobody lives on, and it comes up for road resurfacing, and we go by well, we need to protect our assets, and we go and resurface that road, potentially there could be grass growing up through that road again before any houses are ever built on it. So I think this person was saying that we should consider the concept of, if there's no homes, no power, no water on that street, that it comes off the list until such a time as development occurs on that street, and then it would come back up. I don't know if there's any merit to that idea, but I thought this might be the environment to have that discussion. Does that make any sense or not, or?
I can't answer
Yes.
what's required to abandon a roadway.
Well, I mean, not abandon it, just saying we're not going to invest any money into that road for resurfacing until, in other words, if it's a 10 now, it's still going to be a 10, right? So we leave it alone until there's development on that street or in that area, and then we would go in and put it back in and take care of the road. That was the concept. That way, we're not spending money on a road that nobody lives on until such time as somebody would. That was the thought. Just wanted to see what the rest of the board thought about it.
Well, as it relates to the ones that are funded by the county outside the MSBU, that's not really an issue because that takes care of itself. The issues on the MSBU, and I don't know that qualifies because of the constraints of that legal settlement.
Well, that's not our call to make on them. I'm just talking about the county-related funding. So you don't think that's an issue with what the
It's not
county's
an
doing?
issue because if there are no houses on it, it's never coming to the top of the list. I mean, it isn't going to happen for our list.
But I guess the argument was, if there is a 10, okay, on the list that nobody lives on, even though you say it never comes to the top of the list, it's still occupying a slot on the list. And the argument is that it would come off the list and then go back in at such a time. In other words, we'd have 3 pots, 7 to 10, and then the ones that nobody lives on comes out of that pot, which makes more room for more 7 to 10s to go in. I think, as I understood the concept, that's the way it's being presented.
Yeah, the only thing, it'll never make the funded list if there are no houses on it.
Right.
And you'll see that clearly in a minute.
Okay, well, like I said, it was just something that was brought up. Wanted to see if the board thought there was any merit in it as we continue to tweak on this formula. Yes, sir, Commissioner
Sure.
Kennard.
If I'm understanding where Randy's coming from, is that the road that, is rated 10, like what you've outlined, that has no houses on it, is going to be in the same pot with all the other 7 to 10s that may have houses on it. It's not prohibiting another road from going into that pot that's rated 7 to 10. There could be unlimited numbers of 7 to 10 numbers go in there. But as far as if we stay with our current formula, or really any formula that includes density, it's never going to be, it's going to sit in that pot forever. I guess that's my
Yeah, I'd just
understanding.
as soon keep it on the list to know it's out there.
Yeah.
But it isn't going to make any difference because it'll never get to the funded portion of the list.
Commissioner Davis?
The only time this becomes an issue is if we're fully funding all the roads. Otherwise,
correct.
something else is going to trump it always.
Well, and my point is if we go with some kind of formula for the future, we will, right? I mean, aren't we trying to get to where we're fully funded? We have every road in the cycle? Isn't that where we're trying to get to?
And if you all do it, it's going to take a number of years to catch up. But if you continue to do the 0.2 of a mil for 5 years to get to the 1 mil, you will then get to the level of 10 to 14 million for funding. However, it'll be at least 7 to 10 years before you even get close to catching up.
And let's just say the citizens decide to go for a referendum and you get another 16 to 20 million, what's that do to it?
No, it gives you a good shot at, catching up
Right.
quickly.
I just want to say that we looked at all the ideas that were presented to us. Anything else, Commissioner Davis?
Yes, the only thing, I think that the current methodology for ranking the roads on who gets to have their road repaved is making the best of a bad situation. There's not much that could probably be done to improve on that aspect. However, it might be worth a conversation to tweak that instead of automatically having the highest density win in that second pot, to just say it's a minimum level of density, and then do worst to first with a minimum level of density, whatever that magic minimum is. Because we do have some neighborhoods that are, there's just neighborhoods that are just never getting paved, like Pine Ridge, and they need some work done there. So, just a thought.
Any comments, Daniel?
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
Commissioner Slaybaugh.
I can see both sides, but I really like, what was mentioned about the pots, because even though the 10 without any density is still at the bottom of the pot, it makes it does make it a little confusing for people. And I like the idea of different pots because, worst to first, density, perhaps density that is at a platted piece of property like you brought up in Pine Ridge that is built out, 95% built out. It will never reach the density of Beverly Hills, but it is built out. So we kind of got to throw that into another pot or try to figure out that, because obviously density works the best, that formula that y'all came up with the last 8 years or so, but there's just another caveat to it. And what's wrong with having 4 different pots and trying to figure out, okay, this pot will get the bulk of the money, but this pot that is built out might get $2 million thrown into that pot. I mean, it's just an idea, but something to think about. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, let me,
I'm
quick,
sorry.
I just want to check, see if Commissioner
I'm good,
Kennard.
I'm
You're
listening,
good?
I'm
Okay,
listening.
Commissioner Kennard.
I think we could spend this entire morning and maybe another workshop talking about different formulas or ways. And this isn't a criticism of any comments at all that have been made so far. But having sat up here now for 5 years, and we chew on road resurfacing at least once or twice a year, and how to manipulate the formula to get the stuff done that we want done. This isn't a formula problem. It's a funding problem. And long before I ever decided to get involved in politics, I was reading about where the commissioners that were sitting up here at the time were trying to figure out how to solve this road resurfacing problem. That we were on a 60-year plan or an 80-year plan, 100, whatever the number of the day was that would get thrown about. And still to this day, we haven't solved it because we're looking every place else to solve it other than where we need to be looking. We've got to solve the funding issue. I guess to backtrack a little bit, at last meeting or whenever the last time was we were talking about this, I advocated the 0.2 of a mil for 5 years. Let's do that. Well, that's going to that will get us there in 5 years, and then we have solved the funding problem for road resurfacing. The problem is that is a small portion of the population in the county that are going to be fully funding the road resurfacing. Now, certainly the $4 million right now that we're getting from gas taxes that are going to road resurfacing, that is something that everybody that travels through the county pays, and residents pay, or people that buy gas in the county pay. I also, like everybody else up here, believe that the 1 cent local option sales tax would be a great way to do this if we could get it to pass. And there is no doubt that it's going to take literally all hands on deck and still be a mighty push uphill to make that happen. So I'm going to throw this one out there. I guess, bro, why not, right? What do the board members think about an MSBU that we put into place to fully fund road resurfacing that would be, whatever amount it is that we need annually, if it's 15 million, 16, 14 million, whatever that number is, you deduct what the gas tax money is that can go to road resurfacing, and the MSB covers the rest of it. There's no doubt in my mind that would be a firestorm of a public hearing. But if and when that passes, this board has solved the road resurfacing problem in Citrus County. That is in place, and the roads get resurfaced on a 25-year cycle. I've had some discussion with Randy about the idea and told him I was going to bring it up today. Might have given him a little bit of a headache thinking about yet another avenue for funding this. But you could possibly bond half of that for the catch-up part of it, and the remaining half of that MSBU money, you use your formula for the road resurfacing or the formula that we have, or some modification of that the board would decide on. But finally, the county commissions can go about doing the business of the county and not having to chew on how do we come up with a more complicated formula, how do we add pots or take away pots or change the numbers of roads, things like that. The road resurfacing is covered. That's just my thought.
Commissioner Kennard, as usual, a brilliant idea. I just have a couple questions. Well, first of all, let's talk about what we have done and what we can do and what we can't. So far, we've said the 2/10 of a mil we've pretty much agreed on, and asked Randy to put that in the budget when he formulates it. So we have that done. The sales tax is something we can't do other than to ask the citizens if they want it. So if it passes or it doesn't pass, that's up to the citizens, okay? So I have no problem putting a sales tax referendum on the next general election ballot, and saying, if you like it, vote for it. If you don't, don't, right? And if we do that, we do it. And then I also don't have a problem with the MSBU, depending on how that's calculated. Okay, what I like about the MSBU is every property owner, not just somebody that pays ad valorem taxes, just like we do with stormwater, right? So everybody's going to contribute because everybody drives on the roads pretty much, okay? But the question would come down to is, we've talked about this before, and if you're talking about road frontage, that's definitely not fair. And if you're talking about lot size, well, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with it. So if it, if it was an MSBU, I would think that we would come up with some kind of formula that's related to the lot. Like if there's X amount of lots in Citrus County and we need this much. But see, my thinking would be, is what I like about what you said is the MSBU is recalculated every year based on how much we need. So if the sales tax passes, we won't need that much from an MSBU. If the sales tax does not pass, then as you said, we have the formula in place to make it happen. So it's kind of like we're laying the steps out there and we're letting the public decide which route they want to go. And then it'll, like you said, it'll be up to all of us to get out and talk about it. I think we all know that the sales tax benefits particularly Citrus because of the vast number of tourists that we have here they're going to be paying. But the way I see it, this is a 1, 2, 3. The only thing that I would have a problem with is the way the MSBU is calculated. It's just got to be kind of a, just like we did with stormwater. Let everybody be equally mad all the way across the board, but everybody is equally paying. So I think that would be great, because then we've identified the funding, and then each year it's recalculated. That's what I like, instead of it just being plugged in saying we get this much, because if the economy in the Citrus County keeps growing, that sales tax number is going to get larger every year too.
Right.
Okay. So I think that's a great idea. Anybody down here? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, just one additional comment, and maybe I should be careful about grabbing victory or grabbing defeat from the jaws of victory. The discussion that we just had a couple minutes ago about these roads that have all the vacant lots on them, many lots that are that are owned by out-of-state owners, or maybe trusts that are just hanging on to large masses of land. Those properties when a road gets repaved, those properties benefit. So they would be sharing in that MSBU cost, whether they have improved their lot or not, that they would be sharing in the cost of us maintaining our roads, getting to a real position of maintaining our infrastructure.
I would agree to that as well. Yes, Commissioner Carnahan, you had a comment?
Well, here's what I'm gonna tell y'all guys. You might as well throw the sales tax out the window. You got the sheriff wanting $7.5 million, okay? So we're looking at raising the millage quite a bit this year, if we give into what we're being asked for. So the citizens are gonna go absolutely crazy, and they're not gonna vote in a sales tax this round. Now, 2024 might be a different round. So the MSBU at this point is probably the way to go. In how we calculate that and how we come up with it is a different issue we have. But I mean, I don't plan on giving $7.5 million to the sheriff, but others might here to do that. But you're looking at, from what I've heard on budget talks already, on what Constitutional's won, we're looking at over $1 million right now. And with inflation and everything that's in our economy, I think there's going to be an outcry in residents in this county. So I don't think that even is to consider at this point. The MSBU definitely would be something to consider, but a sales tax on this round, I think we're way behind on that one. 2024 would be more like getting it passed, but not this round.
Okay, Commissioner Slabaugh.
Okay, I've been talking about sales tax for a long time, and I said in January 2021 I was going to stop talking about it, but I'm glad you guys are talking about it again, because everyone pays, everybody contributes. It has to do a lot with, there are people that maybe on the fringe even, that are buying sodas and candy and things like that. They even contribute to this pot. So what would it hurt to put it on the ballot? You find out where the areas didn't vote for it. We learned that, you explained that about Citrus Springs didn't go for it. And then if we can then have that time to educate or find somebody to educate the public, would it hurt to be on the ballot? That's my question. And I have to disagree with you about that the formula is right. The formula is there, but when you have build out, they're always going to get bumped. And even if you have all the money, it's still going to take many, many years, and they will always get bumped. That street that's got 3 acres or 5 acres, but they're completely built out. That's where I think I have to disagree with you on. And then, MSBU, I might need to chew on it a little bit, but sales tax, those are my questions. What would it hurt? I mean, if you think it would hurt, then I want to listen.
I just want to say quickly, I understand and I agree with what everybody's saying. I mean, nobody wants to pay more tax, but the issue with the sales tax is a referendum. If we do an MSBU, the 5 of us sitting up here said, we're doing this. Okay? Mm-hmm. If we do a sales tax, it's up for the citizens. And if the citizens, if you're an elected official, why would you ever have a problem with something being on the ballot? That's always my choice. So if the citizens said, no, we told you before, no, we're saying no again, end of story. They said no. If they say, well, we'd rather have that than an MSBU, and if they understand the MSBU will the amount will be related to whether it's collected. But again, that's a choice. I personally would always rather give the citizens the choice before we increase the tax on them. But whatever you guys want to do. Again, some really good points. I personally don't think there's anything wrong with choice. But so who was ready? Yes, okay. Commissioner Davis, then Commissioner Kennard.
Few different comments here. Nobody's saying, to your point, Commissioner Kennard, nobody's saying that this isn't a funding problem. It absolutely is a funding problem. But Commissioner Slabaugh took the words out of my mouth to say we need to make sure that the formula is going to get things done in a more timely manner. So if we're doing the 0.2 of a mil over 5 years, that's taking 5 years to even get to fully funding. And so all these people that have daisies growing up through their road in a fully built-out neighborhood, we need to look at that. So I think that's the only point we're trying to make. I have been pro-sales tax all along. I look at, from my research and sort of my spidey sense of the way people look at these taxes, I think you look at 3 different buckets of things, of possibilities. In the one bucket is for infrastructure maintenance. That should be our job. That's not the citizen's job to decide to fund or not. That's just a basic minimum for the county to provide safe and good roads and bridges in the county, period, full stop. I don't feel like that's a good sales tax item. I think a good sales tax item is either when the citizens put it out there for the citizens, do you want a higher level of service? Do you want a higher level of service from the sheriff? Do you want a higher level of service from other aspects of the county? Do you want more parks? Do you want things like that? And then the third bucket is something aspirational. Certainly not a stadium for Citrus County, but that would be something that you would see a major metropolitan area put out there for a sales tax. Do you want a stadium? More Citrus County specific, Commissioner Carnahan has talked about having a sports complex. A number of people in the county have talked about a sports complex. That might be something. We're looking at improving mental health. We're also probably going to have a wave of homelessness coming down the pike because all the rents are skyrocketing and things like that. So there are aspirational things for this county as we grow that might be more appropriate for a sales tax. And I think an MSBU is actually, going through another MSBU meeting. However, I will say that if we put aside anybody that was not on a county-maintained road, meaning a sand road or in a gated community, things like that, as long as they were exempt, if you have property on a county-maintained road, you pay into an MSBU to make up the difference from the gas tax. That is actually the most fair because it is a direct benefit to you as a lot or homeowner in Citrus County. But I would be interested in what the swamp math is on that. I don't know if Randy or Colleen could kick out how many digits that would be on an annual basis.
Commissioner Knorr, before you start, a couple of comments. First of all, you just lost me on the sales tax. That's why the sales tax died last time. That's why it would die again. Because we went from residential road resurfacing to shelters for homeless people and all that, and that'll kill it quicker than anything. So if it's not designated for one particular thing, the citizens will never go for it. And we're already muddying the waters before we even talk about it. So if that was the case, you lost my support for it. Here's the other question about the build-outs, like with Pine Ridge and things like that. Is there not some way to institute a traffic count into that? In other words, if Pine Ridge would say, well, we're built out, but people use us as a throughway, and everybody uses our road that drives through here, is there any merit to the idea of looking at a traffic count and trying to incorporate that into our formula? To say, you got 2 roads, but this has more density, but this has more traffic on it? Is there a way to institute that?
Chair,
Yeah.
you completely misunderstood me.
I'm talking about something different, Randy.
Well, anything's possible. It's just that the math gets real complicated and what constitutes a through road. I mean, you've got, in traffic engineering terms, you've got arterials and collectors, and arterials and collectors, get a higher priority. Arterials and collectors are also SCOP eligible. But, determining what the acceptable traffic level is for additional traffic is going to be very hard to capture.
Well, and again, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. All I'm saying is that if you have, say, a street like, say, Pine Ridge Boulevard, not say it's fully developed, and you have another area where on a mile you might have 100 houses, and nobody on that street drives, right? They all ride their bikes somewhere. But the people that live on Pine Ridge Boulevard all have to drive, and they have to drive a longer distance because of the size of it. Would that not have some bearing because density would outweigh on one hand, but traffic count would outweigh on the other hand? And again, this is what workshops are for, just to throw out ideas. But I'm just wondering if there's any merit or a way to make that work. So
We can look at it.
Mr.
Okay.
May
Chairman.
I, please?
Yes. Commissioner Slabaugh, excuse me, Commissioner Davis, then we'll go to Commissioner Slabaugh.
I was speaking from an overarching strategic standpoint on sales tax, on the types of things that one might put forward to a sales tax. At the very base level is stuff that we should have been taking care of for the last 7 or 8 years. That is road resurfacing and bridges and so forth. That is the duty of the county to maintain our infrastructure somehow, some way. That, in my mind, is not something that should go forward as a sales tax. The mid-level is more where I'm aiming at right now, is things like, does the county want a higher level of service from the sheriff's department? Then that would be a really good thing. The third level, the highest level, is something aspirational. And to my mind, that might be something way down the road for this county, at least 5 years out, something like that. But absolutely 100%, whatever we did, it would be absolutely clear to the citizens what they were voting on, and the money would be gated for that item. And there would be a sunset clause, period, full stop.
Okay,
Mr. Chair?
Can I go to Commissioner Slabaugh first and then come to you?
Sure.
Promise turn next. Commissioner Slabaugh?
I understand what's being said about the traffic study, and I'll circle back to a question about that. But for instance, what Commissioner Kitchen is saying, I lived on Bronco off of Pine Ridge Boulevard, and it was, it's built out. It was almost built out when I lived there 15 years ago. And the mini farms would shoot down
Yeah.
Bronco, and tremendous amount of traffic. And, we weren't on the list always because it was in a 1 acre plot. And we ended up moving because it was just so much traffic. So circling back, would it be appropriate for Pine Ridge to do a traffic study and to come before us and say, hey, these are the streets, they're built out, they're getting this much traffic, rather than putting it on somebody that lives in Sugar Mill Woods to pay for a traffic study in Pine Ridge? Those are my two things.
Can you answer that? And then we'll go to
Well, we
Commissioner
have
Carr.
various traffic counters around the county, but they're typically on collectors and arterials. What we're looking for in those traffic counters is to see where the motoring public is encountering delays and what we can do to alleviate those delays. We do not have traffic counters in residential areas.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Is there a fee to that? Like, how much do those traffic counts cost the taxpayers?
Oh, yeah, there's a fee, there's
That's what
a
I'm
fee to
saying,
it.
rather than,
There's a fee to it, and I mean, there are traffic engineers out there that do all kinds of very interesting and enlightening things. I mean, they'll tell you what the direction of the traffic is, what they're doing. The hardest part is to interpret those results, and unless you've got results widely across the county, how do you compare them to Bronco versus a road in Pine Ridge, for example? I mean, what's the relative value? And it's coming up with something to make it, meaningful.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. And can I go to Commissioner Carhan, then back to you?
No,
Commissioner
no,
Carhan?
Randy just answered the question.
Oh, did he? Okay,
Yeah, he
Commissioner
just
Kennard.
answered that question. It's good.
All right, a couple comments. Commissioner Slabaugh asked if there's anything wrong with putting it on the ballot. Absolutely not. And, if there is a campaign that is put together that the taxpayers of the county ultimately pass a sales tax, this 1 cent sales tax, then you drop your MSBU to 0. You don't need it.
Okay.
So that's the way that would work. But understand that at the very earliest, a sales tax, local option sales tax, would go on the ballot for 2024. That means that you are implementing it possibly in 2025. You're putting a 4-year or 5-year sunset on it. To get geared up is going to take you a year, 2 years. So the reality is you're covering your road resurfacing costs for about 2 or 3 years at the most, and then you're going back into battle again to get. Now there's a much higher percent chance of it being renewed than there is getting it off the ground initially. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with putting it on there and, telling voters, look, if this passes, this is going to zero. If this doesn't pass, we still got to repave the roads. So if it passes, it drops to zero. If it doesn't, then you're still resurfacing your roads. I apologize if I said or implied that the formula is the right formula. Now, any formula, any combination we come up with here is going to be wrong, because you've got limited funds, and if you take some of those funds from over here, you're leaving it off over here. So, somebody's going to come to us and say, your formula's wrong because of X. But whatever we decide on up here, adding some form of worst to first, or some modification of the formula to address the neighborhoods with larger lots that are on the forever to be repaved list. I'm fine with for the most part whatever modification we come up with there. And private road residents would not be exempt from the MSBU unless they only drive on their private road, which I highly doubt. When they leave their private road, they're going to come onto a county road. When they go to the grocery store, when they go to the schools, when they leave town, when they travel anywhere, they're going to travel on a county road. They're going to travel on county roads. They're going to travel on state roads. So it is a county-wide problem, and it's something that I think that everybody should be participating in.
If I, yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
no, go
Commissioner
ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, if we go back in history, let's go back to the stormwater MSBU. The reason, and again, let's be frank and candid here, the reason that we got so much pushback is a lot of the people we heard from are people that paid no county taxes. Okay, let's just be realistic about that. When people came up and said you added $40 to my tax bill or $50 to my tax bill and it went up 800%, that tells you, something. So when it comes to these kind of services, when it comes to fire, when it comes to those types of issues, and I could even go along, to some extent about law enforcement, or especially road patrol for an MSBU, because if it's something that everybody shares in those expenses, then, I think the MSBU makes sense. But I think from the taxpayer perspective, people would prefer an MSBU because then everybody pays, just like what we did with stormwater as compared to just making it ad valorem, which only then the people that have something above the homestead exemption, and again, continue to realize that these exemptions are going to continue to increase. I mean, I think Tallahassee is going to just keep sending more exemptions our way, and especially if it gets to the point where anybody over 65 doesn't pay taxes, and I think probably 25 people in Citrus County will be paying all the taxes, So those are issues I think that are out there that we need to keep in mind as we go down the road. Yes, Mr. Oliver.
Yeah, let me mention this. The two methods that I'm aware of for the MSBU, the one I'm more familiar with than the other. Marion County uses one where they do each road individually, and they come up with a price for that particular road. They assess each person on that road by linear front foot and its specific benefit. We have to remember that with a municipal services benefit unit, MSBU, it has to be equitable based on the value that the citizen receives. My understanding is there's some other counties that do it on a county-wide basis. While it may be possible to charge them a part of it or a portion, my concern with streets that are private or not county maintained, such as unpaved roads, is how do you apportion that? And if that's the direction the board wants to explore, my recommendation was that we get you more information to be able to do it. But clearly Terra Vista and Black Diamond, to use two examples, I mean, how is charging them something equitable? Okay, if somebody lives on State Route 44 or 200 or 41 or 19, what's the equitability in that? And I would need to talk with somebody who can give me some better answers so I can provide you the best information possible.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Sledbaugh.
I understand the MSBU, everybody would pay. I think that that's, again, where education goes to helping this situation, because, yes, everybody will pay. I'm on a private road, I'm taking care of my road, you know, with my POA and HOAs and different things. But sales tax, everyone pays in the county, plus the tourism. And, you know, part of the education is, okay, well, we're gonna put another MSB on you, because MSBU on you. But if the voters pass the sales tax, then we also get the tourist that's coming using our road, not staying in the night in our hotels, and getting to, you know, we're just giving that money away, leaving it on the table. So if what you want to get out of this workshop today, I would be for putting it on the ballot, seeing the first step to education and letting the people know, okay, well, you didn't let that pass, so now our next, you know, we might have to do an MSBU. What do you think about that? Which one would you rather have? And also the sunset, it wouldn't be 4 or 5 years. And if you look through the discretionary sales tax for the state of Florida, there's 23 of the counties that don't even have a sunset, and a lot of them have 39-year sunset. I'm not recommending that, but the minimum 10 years sunset. And 1 cent, this is for the roads. That's it, boom. And that's how I would do it, and that would be, if you want a consensus, that's where I would go.
Okay,
Mr.
yes,
Chairman?
Commissioner Kennard.
I don't have an issue with putting it on the ballot. I think it's worthwhile, and I think the effort to educate people about where the money's going to go, what it's going to be used for. But make no mistake, we're kicking the can for another 2 years, and right now we need. Let's say the number's $15 million a year. We put, what are we putting, $6 million this year into it?
Yes, 6
So
million.
we're going $9 million behind this year. And now next year, if we put $4 or $5 million into it, we're going behind another $10 million. So now we're $19 million behind. And then 24, say we're another $20 million. So now we're $29 million behind. And it likely won't be implemented until 25. So waiting to see if a sales tax passes before we do anything, before we solve this problem. And remember, that's going to be a completely new board that can kick it down the road for another few years. We're not solving the problem. That is, you know, passing the MSBU, no doubt would create some interest for sure. But that is something that can always be dropped or eliminated. If the sales tax initiative should pass, drop it to 0 or eliminate it altogether. But waiting, I think waiting and again kicking it down the road to give the next board or the board after that board, handing them this mess to deal with, that how many boards before us have not handled properly. I mean, it's not, I don't mean that as a criticism, but everybody's trying to figure out the right way to do it. It's a funding problem. We got to put the funds to it. We got to figure out where those funds are coming from.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Slater.
I agree with you. I'm just saying, can we kick that MSBU down the road 1 year? Let's see what happens in November, and then we will have more tools in our toolbox to say to the citizens, this is the why we have to go to the route we're going to.
Are you saying this November? Is that when you're saying you want it on the ballot this November?
I don't
Okay.
think you have time to do that.
Okay, that was
That's what one of my first questions
Right.
that I asked.
Which-
Would it be possible, would it,
So I think we're saying 2024 is the first election it could be on.
yeah,
So.
that's what That's why I asked that question.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's time to get it on the 22 ballot, but even if there was, there would not be sufficient opportunity to get information out there because you're up against the wall.
Okay, well, and again, this is all speculation, because that's like saying, well, if a candidate enters a race now, there's not sufficient time for them to get their message out by 2022 in the election. You know, so I don't know. I mean, what we're talking about is we only want to put something on the ballot if we absolutely feel it can pass. And my point is, if it's possible to put it on the 2022 ballot, and we can do that, then why not do it? Let the citizens decide, just like they will about a candidate, you know? Maybe people don't want to do it. Maybe that'll become a campaign issue and people don't want to address that on this go-around. But I had no problem with that. Commissioner Carnahan, you had your hand up there.
Well, I'm just telling you, if you put it on this year's ballot, you're doomed for failure, okay? 2024, and if you put an MSBU in and then you educate the citizens on, hey, you pass a 1 cent sales tax that everybody's going to pay that comes through our county, and we're going to eliminate this. I think that's a very educational point to get your sales tax passed, versus just throwing it on the ballot. Again, look what we're up against this year on raising taxes. If people are just going to go ballistic, and you hit the nail on the head earlier. You know, a lot of our residents homestead, and they don't hardly pay anything, and if they've got to pay $2 or $5, they come unglued. And so I think you better be careful with trying to just throw it on the ballots in 2022.
So let me throw something out for everybody to react to, because Randy still has some other stuff to show us, although the rest of these facts are based on what ifs, you know, what if this much money is spent and so on. So let's just talk about this. It seems to me we've taken step one, okay, which is adding the 2/10 of a mil. Okay, so we've done step one. I think everybody agrees with that. Okay, in my mind, step two is to have Randy come back with the explanation of what the assessment, how the assessment would work on an MSBU, because I think that's the most equitable way, but not until I see what it's going to be based on. You know, I've heard this before, and somebody says use road frontage. Well, if you live on a corner lot, on a 5-acre lot, you're going to be hammered by a road frontage thing, you know. So it's got to be something related to, just like we did with stormwater. And if you remember, we actually had to hire a consultant to come back with the formula to make it fair for everybody on stormwater. Okay, and again, there's people are going to be upset anytime you do anything. You know, people are going to be upset if it means raising more money. But I have to agree with Commissioner Kennard in the fact that if we want to fix the problem and we don't want to have another workshop on it and we don't want to keep talking about it, we can move forward with an MSBU based on if we all agree that this is the most equitable way of fixing the problem. Then we can look into and take another 2 years. That's also, let's say we shoot for 2024 to put the sales tax issue on the ballot in 2024. Then that gives everybody a couple of years to get out and do that, realizing that one of the big sales points of the sales tax would be that the MSBU would drop to zero or whatever, so they're not going to be paying twice. But Commissioner Schleybaugh, I have to come back and say, what kills the sales tax issue, the only way I could ever gather support when I was out talking to people about the sales tax is that it must have a 4-year sunset. Okay? And their point was, if you told me the only way I could elect a county commissioner is they got 10 years to serve, I wouldn't vote for a single one of them.
Okay.
But knowing that I only have to put up with them 4 years before I get to decide again, right, then people go, okay, that's fine. And so the concept was, if we're good, and the clerk gives us a report every year and says, this is the money that came in and this is where it was spent, and the citizens see that the board, whoever it is a good steward of their tax money, they will re-up it. Because if you look at these other counties, it's the counties even that have the sunset that the residents always come back and put back in because they see it's getting done. If you tell them, what'll kill it quicker than anything is if you say a 10-year, 20-year, 39-year, that's the same, because nobody's going to remember it's in there. That's why that's done. They'll forget it's there. They think it's there forever. And they know they don't have the option of saying, well, we trusted you and whatever. This way they can say, we trusted you and you did what you said or you didn't. And then the other thing is if you start mixing the use. The reason this died before is because it said road resurfacing or anything else the county wanted to use it for, and that killed it too. So it's got to be tight. It's got to be controlled. And I think the thing I love about this whole concept is that the MSBU is the weight. You know, in other words, the county did its job. It says this is what we're going to assess everybody if we don't have a sales tax. If we have a sales tax, then that goes away. You know, and I think that's a fair way to explain it. So, but in the meantime, I don't think you are kicking it down the road by adding the 0.2 of a mil, which is getting started with something right away. So, yes, Commissioner Slabaugh.
I didn't understand the 4 years, so I appreciate that, because, you know, I'm just going off what the state has put out, but that makes sense, and I appreciate that. I also, you know, you don't know for sure that it will die on the vine, and you might be right, but with social media and Pine Ridge and different areas and different businesses getting together, we're in an instantaneous world. And to say, oh, we can't get it passed in November of 22, I have a little bit more faith. My glass is half full, but I'm only one commissioner, but I would suggest, if it wouldn't hurt, to put it on there and let's see. I'm for sales tax before I'm tax the MSBU. And I understand what you're getting at, but just to say it won't work, so let's not even try for November of 22, that doesn't sit well with me. I'd rather try than to say, okay, we're gonna put another MSBU on you, because I just don't feel comfortable with that. You know, we all have very, you know, inflation's up, just doesn't feel right. I know you will be solving a problem, it hurts me a little to do that tax.
Commissioner Kennard.
I said earlier that I didn't have an issue with putting a sales tax initiative, a local option sales tax initiative on the ballot. I was referring to 24, so I apologize for the miscommunication there. If you just throw, and I'm with you 100%, I would love to see the voters support something like that so that the tourists could help to pay for it. But to just throw it on the ballot in 22, if there's a possibility of that happening, the risk of it failing is enormous. I mean, enormous. If it does fail, you've ruined or you've spoiled the possibility of getting a sales tax, a local option sales tax passed for many years, whether it's for schools, public safety, water quality, parks, road resurfacing, any of that. If you throw it haphazardly out there now, you know, if we can get it in there and it fails, we've done more damage than we have possible good. If you put it out there on the 24 ballot, you know, there is a campaign that mounts behind these things and figures out exactly what it takes, what the people are thinking, how much or how little do they trust government to do with that money, as they said they were going to do. What could government do to gain greater trust, to get them to support it? Would they support it with a 4-year sunset or a 5-year sunset? Would they support it if it not only, you know, paid for half of the road resurfacing, but half of public safety? You know, all of that is stuff that takes time to develop that, so that a winning education campaign can be put forward to the voters. Then they can go to the ballot box and say, all right, I'm comfortable with this. I'm going to support it. I'm going to help our county get to where it needs to be. We're going to give it a 4-year look. And if you guys do what you say what you're going to do, then I'll support it, or a 5-year look, or whatever the year is that they're comfortable with.
Okay, Commissioner Davis.
I agree with Commissioner Kennard, and I would say that the strategic planning process will be more or less coming to fruition around January, February timeframe of this coming year. And that will bring up because we're going to do basically workshop it with citizens, and it was citizens who put it together to begin with, and workshop it to a much greater population. And we'll see what our citizens want from the county and what they might be willing to pay for from a sales tax option. And I have the same fears about putting it on 22, but I'm definitely very pro sales tax, and I think you know that, so.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I just feel like, you know, I feel like, I just feel like the five of us, I mean, I've been doing this, collecting sales tax for 30 years, and to be the only county that doesn't use the discretionary sales tax tool, it just frustrates me. And I feel like we're just, you know, I brought it up in 2020, and it, you know, it went over like a ton of bricks, and I'm so glad we're there now, but I just feel like it's just, again, another 15 months, another 2 years. In the meantime, we're putting this weight on the taxpayers' backs, and there's so many people that aren't contributing to the road or contributing to the gas tax. So I'm just frustrated, and you know, I'm just frustrated. So good luck. I'm gonna, you know, hopefully we'll figure this out, but.
Mr. Carhane, got anything?
No, I think Commissioner Kennard hit it on the head. The reason these have failed in the past is because they have just thrown them on the ballot. They've left them open-ended, where, you know, we're going to use them for roads and anything else. And then I think it has spoiled for what we're trying to accomplish now. And that's, so I think you hit it on the head
So
there.
let's see if we can bring this in for a landing.
I can bring it in for landing pretty quick.
Well, let me-
6 months is your limit for a ballot initiative, so you would have to approve the language, and frankly, unless you call a special meeting, you can't
We
even
don't
get
have
to
time.
6 months.
Okay, so that kind of took care of that. Well, let's look at this. Let's try to give Mr. Oliver some direction from this workshop so he can go to work on it. That'll come back before the set a regular meeting. So the 2/10 of a mil is, we've given that direction. So that one's done. Is there anyone that objects to asking Randy and the staff to come back with some breakdown of the MSBU? In other words, allocation, you know, thoughts, what the cost would be. I mean, I think we're saying that, let's take the sales tax off the table for right now. Let's just say if it can't get on the ballot until 2024, it's not going to happen for at least 3 more years if they do pass it. So we're looking at a funding issue here, that if you want to start moving down that road, the MSBU is something, and it doesn't say we're going to do it. It would be just like what we did with the stormwater, and that is we would look at the formulas, decide if we want to do it, if it's fair or not, and move from there. So is there anyone that objects to moving forward with gathering information on the MSBU for road resurfacing?
No.
Mr. Oliver, I see no objection to looking
Okay,
at that.
what, I would like the provision that we can spend up to $10,000 to use a consultant that can pull together what other people are doing, because as I say, I've got some questions on the methodology, so I would like to use, you know, run it by some people that have done this before.
I think we have enough in reserve contingency that
We
that
do.
could easily cover it. But I think that's a key too, because I think one of the reasons that I went with the stormwater MSBU is that they gave a very compelling data-driven analysis of how we got to where we are and what made it fair. And particularly, I mean, I know I grilled the one presenter for quite a while on all the different questions and got them answered. So rather than staff just standing up here and say, we made a few phone calls, if we're serious about this, which is going to be multi-million dollars, it seems 10,000 is a good investment. Yes, Commissioner Kennard.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that a consultant will come back with a formula that addresses the concerns that Commissioner Davis had, or I should say that, you know, that all of us would be concerned about, but she mentioned, you know, what about the private roads? Somebody's living on a dirt road, and they're paying an MSBU for road resurfacing, and their road will never be resurfaced. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't pay something, you know, that they're gonna, you know, they would contribute X amount. It may not be the full value of the MSBU. So I think that getting a professional involved would address those concerns. Folks that live in the private roads that aren't going to be maintained by the county, or people that live on a state road, that those funds are never going to be used to repave that state road. But certainly they do spend some time on the county roads, and they can contribute to some degree to maintaining all the county roads.
So is there any disagreement with asking staff to do that and authorizing up to 10,000
Well,
to do it? Yes.
Denise aptly pointed out that we can't authorize anything like that in a workshop, but you can't.
No,
But I'll
I'm
put
not
it on the next agenda.
I've been here 7.5 years. I know what we can do at workshops and what we can't. All I'm asking is if, before we have Randy leave here and go down a road that none of us want him to go down, I'm just trying to find out, is that the direction? Okay? So what I would hope is that the next time it can be put on the agenda, Randy will come back and say, I've looked into it and here's what I think it's going to cost, and are you interested in doing this or whatever? So I'm just trying to get board consensus that that's the direction we want to go. Okay? Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Any
Yep.
questions? So you feel comfortable to go out and look at what the board's looking for? Because again, I think the MSBU makes the most sense, but I'm withholding my opinion until I see what the allocation and how that's going to be done. So that'll come back before us. When do you think that'll come back, Mr. Oliver? Is that going to take a couple agendas to get that back in front of us?
Not more, may not make the next one, but it'll definitely make the following.
Okay, so let's move on to item 3, which was the sales tax. It appears now that you've just told us 6 months before, which is going to be for the next board to decide. I would suggest somebody someplace put a something in their tickle file saying that we need to talk about this before 6 months before it's due. And if we proceed down that road, if we do the MSBU, I swear that gives us a large tool in the toolbox to explain to people why it's in their benefit, where everybody pays as compared to just the people in the county pay. And I think, but again, I agree that 2022, even if we tried to do a special meeting, it's ramming it through, and we really need a chance to think it out. And I'll tell you the other thing, I won't be here, but if the board in the future decides to do this, what really helped when we sent Commissioner Kennard out on the road show is we actually drafted a draft ordinance of what it would look like, because where we get in trouble is when we go out and we do town halls and we're all giving different messages to people, okay? So what's crucial is that whoever the board is at that time, everybody's on the same page, everybody has the same ordinance in front of them, and then we explain to them, is it a sunset? Yes. For how long? What'll happen? What's it going to be used for? And then everybody has that. And I'll just say this again, and Commissioner Carnahan knows this very well. The main reason this died, I truly believe the main reason this died the first time around is there was an absolute extreme distrust of county government. Okay, the reason we have a hospital foundation is that the citizens didn't want to trust the Board of County Commissioners with the money from the hospital lease, okay? So let's be frank about this, and so it may take some time, but as far as I'm concerned, we spent quite a few years now trying to rebuild the citizens' trust. And this is a part of it. So you have to be able to stand in front of the citizens and say, hey, we told you this, we did it, and it's up to you to decide if you want to do it, and if not, we'll go from there. So there's nothing wrong with standing in front of people and saying, we screwed up, we didn't do it right, and it doesn't mean just us or whatever. And so this is a chance to try to address it the way we see it. So, with that said, I don't think there's any action at this point we need to take on the sales tax discussion, but I think everybody kind of understands in a perfect world, I think that's the best solution to it, but that's not for us to decide. Yes, Commissioner Slabaugh.
And if there's a consensus that maybe that's where we're going to be moving towards, I would like to volunteer to go on the road show. Like I said, I've been doing this for 30 years. Every month I do this. And I talk to people, and when I explain to them and show them the numbers that I'm returning back to the state for discretionary sales tax, they're like, oh, I didn't realize. And, so I would gladly be on the road show, be your little dancing monkey for that.
I would, and I think that's wonderful, and you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, but I would think that the prudent thing, in my mind, is you wait until after November, and you get your new board constituted, and then you can, if you want to proceed down that road, you can get everybody on the same page, so you're all going out and giving the same message.
And I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And we would have to have the exact same message, like, I didn't know about the 4 years, so, definitely, I would agree with that, and I would want that to be part of the instructions to staff.
Right. Commissioner Kennard.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that, provided that Commissioner Slaybaugh doesn't anger Commissioner Davis and I too much between now and then,
Yeah.
she'll be the next chair, so it would be appropriate for the chair
There
to
you go.
go out on
It's a
the road
crapshoot.
show. And, you know, I wouldn't say that it should be on an agenda in November. Let the new commissioners get seated, and then I think probably December or January, those candidates that are out there vying for the 2 seats need to be prepared to have a sales tax, local option sales tax discussion very quickly in December, January, because we have all heard that it is an 18-month, 2-year campaign that it takes of educating folks why this is important, so.
And if I could clarify too, I didn't mean on November. I just
Right.
meant after November. I think the new board's gonna have plenty to do to start with.
Welcome to the board.
Yeah, but I would agree, one of the first workshops that should be had is that.
Yeah.
Because, and the other thing is, there's gonna be 3 experienced commissioners that have had numerous years of discussion about this. So a lot of it might be bringing up the new commissioners into what the background is and why, because it might be you're going to have to start from scratch with these discussions, why this and not that or whatever. But at least that'll be very important because you're going to have a united board to, because if you have one board member out there trying to torpedo this, it's not going to happen,
yeah.
you know, so that'll be the key. So, any other discussion about the 2024 sales tax thoughts or ideas? Commissioner, yes, sir, Mr. Alvin.
Yeah, just 2 comments. You need to be cognizant of the new state law as it relates to what you can and can't do as it relates to advocating for a particular issue.
The way I've dealt with that in the past is if I'm out talking to somebody and they ask me, do you think that's a good, you know, is this a good idea? And I said, well, this is the benefits of it, and this might be the drawbacks, and you know, and you kind of lay it out from a data, you know, good side, bad side kind of a thing. So is there an issue with that?
There's education and advocating.
Right. And nobody's paying me to go out and say that.
Yeah.
So. Okay, anything, now you want to continue with the rest of the numbers? I know we've read them, but I want to make sure.
We can continue with the rest of it. I mean, I'm going to go through, you know, tell you
Go
what
ahead,
you
you put a
kind
lot
of
of time
already
into
knew.
this. You put a lot of time in
Next
this, go
slide.
ahead. I believe we're
Okay.
up too fast.
If,
Yes.
if we tried to bring everything up to date and deal with all the 7 and up roads today, we have 791 miles of county-maintained roads that are currently identified as needed resurfacing at an estimated cost of $123 million. Okay, so that's what I call the backlog, okay? On January the 18th of 2022, the board unanimously approved this $6 million residential list for 2023. Approximately 49.23 miles of roads will be resurfaced. That will benefit 4,021 households, is the way that this is set up. Then I'm going to go through the history of what's been done. I think everybody recognizes that it's a funding issue. There have been multiple approaches to how roads have been selected in the past. The engineer's preference is obviously worst to first. Only rated 10 were selected. The second method that the board used was the Commissioner Pickham, and if my memory's right, I think 2 commissioners chose to select the roads they wanted, and I think 3 stayed with the formula. Then we went to the road rating and density formula that we currently have. Originally, it started out with 6 and higher, and 2 years ago we went to 7 and higher. The next couple of slides will demonstrate what 23 through 26 will look like using worst to first. Please note that the numbers don't reflect inflation. Okay, in 23, that indicates the particular areas. It would be about 26.96 miles of roads. It'd benefit, and this is on a worst to first, 517 homes. Okay, which is not a lot of homes that are benefited. It gets a little worse from there. In 24, it would be 24 miles of roads roughly, benefiting 105 homes. And then in 25, it would be 6 million, and as you can see, most of them are in Citrus Springs. about 24 miles again. However, there would be no homes that are benefited if we went strictly worst to first. Okay, I don't think we need to know that. Go to the slide that says the issues funding. This I think we've already discussed. Reiterate what's been said before. Whatever the formula is, if it isn't my road and you don't have sufficient money, it's not going to be acceptable to me. Okay, and in 24, if we had $10 million, we would be able to do almost 80 miles of. Go to the next slide. Yeah, we can do almost 80 miles of roads, which would benefit roughly 3,800 homes. And then, the rest of it tells you the same thing. So, what you're trying to do is come up with a formula that you think is fair, that benefits, the most citizens in an equitable manner. So, and this formula has evolved over a number of years, as the history shows.
There was an additional formula that was used before any of us were here, on the board, and that was the money was designated per commissioner district.
Yep.
So every district got the same amount of money. And then it came down to either the commissioners or work with staff to come up with how was that money spent. And I remember, Commissioner Carnahan probably remembers this, but when we first started doing this, there was this, that concept came up, and then somebody said, well, I think it was Commissioner Meek, who we were saying, well, virtually every dime of his money would go to Citrus Springs, and there wouldn't be anything for anybody else. And that's when we started saying, well, then maybe that plan is not the way to go. So they've all been through different gyrations of this. So, do you feel like you know what you need from this workshop, Mr. Oliver, to come back and give us some useful information to?
Well, I do. I think on the revenue side, you all want to look at doing an MSBU and see what the pros and the cons of that and what the costs are going to be as it relates to that. The only question that remains is do you all want to modify the formula in any way? As I say, all you're doing is taking the limited resources that we have and dividing them up slightly different. And, there's going to be, obviously, when you have that, some people will be happy and some people won't be as happy.
Well, again, it's going to be up to the board, but I would think that once we answer the MSBU question, that will resolve it because, as Commissioner Kennard pointed out, if it goes that way, you can actually even bond some of that to use that to pay for it to get a jump start. And one final comment from me, Commissioner Davis brought up the point, which I agreed with, about if it's maintenance, that should not be, that should be in the regular county budget. But I think what's happened is that we've neglected these roads for so long, they can't be considered maintenance anymore. They have to be a kind of a rebuild, then maintain. And I think that's the kind of the boat we're in. So I would think that once we're on this schedule, that the maintenance absolutely becomes, you don't build a cart path anymore or a multi-use path without having maintenance considered in the ongoing cost of it. And we need to do the same thing with our roads. Commissioner Slabaugh.
I just wanted to see if there was any kind of consensus to just adding the other pot or figuring out a formula for the build-out of the larger lots, where we stood with that. Because if we just do as we are doing with the formula, then we're going to be pushing Pine Ridge down the road even further.
Well, I think what Commissioner Slabaugh is talking about, for example, if you have two roads of equal length and one of them has 10 lots on the road, 5 on each side, 9 of the 10 lots are built upon, and then you have another one, which, to use just an example, let's say they're 5-acre lots on both sides of the road and both sides are built on, have a house, then if you use ownership that way or built upon, then that road would jump over the one that would benefit 9 citizens, and that's a policy decision.
I guess, Commissioner Slabaugh, my answer would be, is if the MSBU is adopted along the formula that we're talking about, it won't matter, because they'll all get done. That's the goal of the MSBU and/or sales tax down the road, is that everything gets funded and gets into the program so that there is none of this, well, your road wouldn't get done for 50 years or whatever. So that would be the question, is to see what that number comes back. I'm really curious as what that MSBU may look like. You know, that's going to have a lot to do. Is it going to come back at $5 a property or $50 a property, you know, or 100? You know, that's what's going to be interesting to see.
Mr. Otter, let me ask you this real quick. The MSBU that we have for fire, what's it at, $74?
79.
What's it bringing a year? Do you know off the top, or just a roundabout number?
I think it brings in about $5 million.
There you go. So we're going to need more than that. So you're looking at it over $100, $110, $20 a resident. So that just gives you an idea.
That'll be interesting to see what it comes back and how it's calculated. And I'm sure the more people that are paying or whatever it's related to, you know, will make a difference. So.
Well, the one thing I would point out on the fire, the people on private roads pay for the fire fee, which, as I said, I have some reservations. I don't think you can charge them clearly the full amount. Whether you can charge them money is going to be something we're going to have to explore, but we'll find out.
Commissioner Kennard.
Yeah, so I guess going back to the density question, or the build-out question, it sounds to me like Commissioner Slabaugh was asking if some portion of the funds or some portion of the formula could be a density percentage rather than just a straight number of homes. Am I understanding that?
Yes.
The opposite of abandoning the road approach.
Sure.
Just I want to make sure, is that what you were saying?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
just saying, okay, if we have 4 million, then could we throw $1 million to that pot? You know,
Commissioner Davis?
Yes, that's what I'd said when I first spoke earlier in this workshop. I said, if we look at worst to first with a minimum level of density, and then Commissioner Slabaugh brought up the idea of maybe more than one bucket system, which I think is a good way to look at it. Maybe we leave some in the current situation and then some in the minimum density. Maybe that minimum density is one house on the road, or maybe it's, you know, a certain number of houses per foot on the road. But we would look at it through the lens of reality on what we're dealing with, such as Pine Ridge and places like that, to make sure that we were achieving the overall goal of a little bit more balance. And the other aspect to keep in mind too is that if a road is already a 10, how much more is it going to cost if we put that back in the order? There could be some that are like at an 8 or a 9 where it's a cost savings to go ahead and prioritize them earlier because they haven't completely deteriorated. So as I understand it, somewhere between 6 and 7 is optimal. To be fiscally prudent, it's the optimal level is 6 or 7 to repay.
Okay. Yes, sir. Commissioner Kennard.
To your point about maybe tabling that discussion for now until we see how the MSBU thing pans out. We're talking about our road resurfacing program for 23, right? So we've got time to see how this MSBU discussion goes, how all of that pans out, and if that ultimately does pass, then there's enough money to do all of this, okay? That we don't have to look at different ways to slice the same pizza. That, you know, there's more than enough to take care of it. Now, if it doesn't pass, then we gotta maybe revisit, all right, we've only got this much. How are we gonna divide this to try and get some over here and some over here and really not get a whole lot of anything done, but we can make a pretty complex formula out of it.
Mr. Al, we've already approved the 2023 list, have we not? Is that not the one?
The current list, we're going to be bringing you a list for 22, 23, in June or July because the board's indicated that they want to have the contract ready to award in October.
Right.
The current list that we're formulating is based on the current formula. If you want to do that, it may delay that slightly, and we would have to go back and recalculate it based on what you want. But right now, we're on target to bring you that list in, say, July or August, and then we'll go ahead and go to bid and get it awarded September, October, so we can get it done.
Right, because I thought our discussion was to be able to pull the trigger October 1st to be able to
Yeah.
get moved. So I'm
And
just saying,
so-
time is of the
Yeah.
essence
Delaying.
of whatever we do,
Yeah.
right? So- Okay, yeah, Commissioner Davis.
To go back to what Commissioner Kennard said, I was about to argue that we still need to talk about the priorities, even if it is fully funded, because we can't magically wave a magic wand and, get everything done all at once. So we still need to set priorities. And then I thought to myself, well, if it is fully funded, you're always looking for efficiency, so probably then efficiency becomes going into one neighborhood and paving everything that's 7 or above in one neighborhood, just for staging purposes and whatnot, in which case the priorities would be completely different if we're fully funded.
In an ideal world, you're best off doing one subdivision at a time.
Exactly, yeah.
There you go.
So I corrected myself in mid-thought, was my point, but I wanted to bring that up.
Which comes back, if we have the money, it's more easy, it's easier to be efficient with it. That's the
Exactly.
question. Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay, Commissioner Slabaugh, anything else?
No.
Commissioner Carnahan, anything else? Mr. Oliver, do you feel that the board has given you enough information from today that you have to work with?
Yeah, let me just recap what I heard, is you want to look at an MSBU for roads. I'm going to contact somebody to be able to give us some background options and alternatives for that. I'll bring it back in not later than 4 weeks from today of that meeting, and that at this time you do not wish to change the current formula.
That's what I'm hearing as of today, right? Okay. Okay, well, at this time, let's open this up to the public. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on the issue of road resurfacing? That's what this open to the public is about, and again, tell us your name, where you're from. If you're here as representing a group that has a letter on file, you get 5 minutes. If not, you get 3. Please let us know so we know how much time to give you.
My name is Janet Barrick. I'm representing the Citrus Springs Executive Board, so I get 5 minutes. Number one, we talked about, at the board meeting, suggestions for the paving. Maybe going back to the idea of the districts, and the money is taken and it is divided by percentages. And then the districts get, you've got so many roads and you get so much done. Because as you know, Commissioner Slabaugh has 2 distinct areas that are at the bottom of the list. One is Citrus Springs, one is Pine Ridge. And they, at this point, in my lifetime, will never get repaved. Okay. Number 2, the board talked about the fact that this is a tourist county, this is not a manufacturing county. It has not taken off, no matter what the board in the past has tried to do. They have tried land use changes, and you don't see any major manufacturing coming. We see shops, we see stores, we see facilities for nursing homes, facilities for people that, as they're aging, that type of thing. And we see tourism. Citrus Springs is working on tourism. Eventually, we will go to the tourist board and ask for some funding, because Citrus Springs has a thing that we're working on. So be prepared, Mr. Kitchen.
Don't talk to me about it.
Just thinking that.
Just wait, okay? The people in Citrus Springs tried to make it clear when Commissioner Kennard came for the town hall meeting 2 years ago. There were over 100 people in the meeting, all but one said they would be willing to vote for a sales tax, and you dropped the ball, okay? Commissioner Davis came. Yeah, because when you came here, you said nobody in Citrus
Please
Springs
direct your
wanted it.
comments to the chair,
Okay.
please, okay?
When Commissioner Davis came this past month, she found out that there's at least 50%, if not 50% plus one person that would vote for the sales tax. We have been asking and asking for you to put it on the ballot. You have pushed it down the road and pushed it down the road, and now you say you can't get it on the ballot because you don't have enough time. You have wasted our time for the citizens. Now, MSBU, sounds nice. I have never seen an MSBU go down to zero or disappear. The only thing it ever does is, it's a tax that doesn't go away, and all you do is make it go up, up, up. So when you tell people you're gonna try an MSBU, it's a bunch of lies, and I should have worn my shirt that says, "Make lies wrong again," because that's what it's gonna be. It's gonna be a lie to the citizens.
You're very close to making
No, I
personal
know,
comments.
I know.
I'm just correct,
I
I'm
know.
warning you, so you don't get ruled out of
That's-
order.
that's
There's a
fine.
difference making your opinion
No,
and
that's
making
fine.
personal comments, so
That-
please
that's
try to
fine.
stay with that.
Okay.
And I want to know, well, I'm going to ask you again, that's the position of your board, that we're all liars. I just want to be
No,
clear,
the
that's what
posi-
you just said, so let's
No.
be clear about what you say,
Okay.
okay?
I had asked at the board, and we talked to the board at length, okay, a long time. They had seen the paper articles that, had with Mr. Kennard talking about possible MSBU. And that's why they said, all we've seen, we've got an MSBU in Citrus Springs. It doesn't do what you want it to do, and it doesn't go away. So they wanted to make it very clear, it doesn't go away. As for putting it on the ballot for November, there are so many ways to get your education out there that you do not need 2 years to educate people. Okay? There is Facebook. There is the newspaper. There are meetings. Citrus Springs would be behind doing a lot of this. And the board agreed. We would be willing to put finances towards it. When I looked at today's thing, out of the 10.8 million for the gas tax budget, 6 million of it does not go to residential roads. That's over half. So you need this, please consider the citizens instead of, saying you're gonna do this and that and the other. And Mr. Kitchen, thank you for the wonderful meeting today. It took you 2 hours or almost 2 hours to get to where somebody got to say something.
But you took advantage of that, didn't you? So, next speaker, please.
Thank you. My name is Mark Saveska. I live in Beverly Hills. I'm here to represent the Pine Ridge Property Owners Association. I'll be followed by one of my colleagues to give a little bit more detail on some of the information that we're going to present today. We've also provided you with a handout that kind of summarizes what it is we would like to get from this meeting as we move ahead into that. And we have 3 desired outcomes, as you'll see on this. The first one is we'd like to ensure the budget and capital improvement program reflects the increased funding as you directed for your residential road resurfacing. The second, and this is in line, I think, with a lot of what Commissioner Davis was talking about, is identify opportunities to reprioritize funding from lower priority issues to something that's higher priority issue. The third one is identify and examine alternatives to the density rule. Much of the discussion that has preceded me has already touched on that, but there is one additional concern that I'm beginning to hear, is that we're beginning to bet the farm on an MSBU that may or may not solve the problem as the tsunami of broken roads gets closer and closer. And so we have to approach that with a little bit of caution. So going slow does not necessarily solve the problem. Bad news does not get better with time. First issue, budget and the capital improvement program. I'd like to throw some kudos out to the budget folks, because your budget folks put out an outstanding budget. If you're willing to invest the time to dig into that, you get a lot of great information. But what is less clear to us is in this development of the budget right now, it's difficult for a layman, particularly one who's not part of the process, to understand all the details that are in it. And so you directed that 0.2 mil increase across the board, but based on our awareness, superficial though it may be, we don't see that reflected in the budget. And what we want to do is ensure that the county staff has reflected that increase in the budget. Second issue is on reprioritizing stuff. And here, we understand that the budget is a lot more complex than I can fund the sheriff's department or I can fund roads, but I can't do both. It's a lot more nuanced than that. Again, your budget people do a great job on that one. And we look to the members of the board to provide that prioritization, that guidance, and in direction to the staff and leadership on making those hard calls, because we're in a situation where we have to make hard calls. Salute to Commissioner Davis on this one, because I think the strategy effort that she is directing on this is going to help us understand that roads are essential. That's one of the essential tasks that the county has to provide. Only the county can really do that. And so we're looking to you for that leadership on that one, and we think that the strategy will be a good foundation on that. It is both a funding and a density challenge for us. 40% of the roads, 2 out of every 5 miles in Citrus County need repaving. In Pine Ridge, 4 out of every 5 miles need repaving. And the roads continue to deteriorate. That's my concern with the delay as that tsunami approaches. With the $6 million plus up of $6 million that we have in the budget planned and the millage plus up, it'll take 5 years for us to return to the status today. That means the tsunami is going to breathe here and then theoretically go beyond that, assuming that all our planning assumptions are good. It'll take 8 more years to clear the backlog based on our understanding of what's proposed in the budget. That does not include inflation. There's no reflection, or we don't see inflation reflected in the budget. So in reality, that tsunami is coming closer and closer, even though the appearance that our numbers are going up. I think the county staff is best positioned to give you a fully informed opinion on where those opportunities are to reprioritize some money, and there's probably some great information already coming out of the strategy effort that can help with that. The last one, alternatives for density. There was a lot of discussion on that as well. 84% of the roads in Pine Ridge need paving. Why? Underfunding for 15 plus years, longer than that based on some of our stuff, and the density rule disfavors large lots. We see little hope, even with what's been proposed here, that there'll be any significant improvement for Pine Ridge for 5 to 10 years, maybe longer. So I think there's a desire for us to identify and examine alternatives to the density rule. Some examples. There was some discussion on occupancy versus capacity formulas, to use that. There's an opportunity to avoid rebuilding by taking 9s and 10s and putting them in one category, and then 8s and 7s in another category, and maybe taking the available assets.
Your time has expired.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we will continue, we'll keep this and we'll continue to peruse all that. So, can we have the next speaker, please? And just as a formality, I'll let you know you have 3 minutes. So. That was fast.
Sorry. Is this a total time? Hang on. Repeat. There it goes.
I'm Bill Hunter from Pine Ridge. I would have liked to have said this earlier because a lot of it has already been discussed, but I'll go through it. It's going to take several years to see this $10 million fund a 25-year repaving cycle. And the other things you've talked about, they're going to take time. And as Mark said, during that time, roads continue to deteriorate. There's a 791-mile backlog right now. If 10 million, 25, or some of the other alternatives are actually funded, backlog roads will get repaved, some of them. But roads will continue to deteriorate. High-density Condition 6 roads will become 7s, and they will move ahead of the Condition 10 roads that are in the low priority category today. There will continue to be roads cutting ahead in line. Some roads became Condition 10 because nobody lives on them. Some Condition 10 roads serve fully built out but lower density subdivisions. There are families on these roads. I'm not an engineer. This is complicated data, and my compliments to Randy and his staff for dealing with all this and putting this together. That was a wonderful presentation, had you seen it. I'm not an engineer, but from what I've seen so far, there just isn't going to be enough money or time to save some of these Condition 10 roads. they're going to have to be rebuilt. They're not going to be repavable. There's no money for a road rebuilding program. In essence, you're going to abandon these roads. They will be abandoned. They will not be repavable, and they'll just be left to crumble. How are you going to choose which roads fall into that category? Are you going to choose? I offer that it's time to ask staff to evaluate when is a condition road about to become unsavable, and consider what criteria should be going into the group of roads in that category that you are going to abandon. I mean, this is kind of a sad way to end what was a very good meeting, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having the meeting. Thank staff for the work they did, and thank you guys, you folks, for everything you do. We do appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here today. Next speaker, please.
My name is Frank Papson. I'm representing myself. I've been here listening for years, all the different things that were going on. And I've been listening to story after story of kicking things down the road and never being done. Or someday, well, maybe it'll get done. I live in an unincorporated area. Excuse me. Stormwater. I have an MSBU, whatever that is, put on my property because the county benefits. Now you're going to add another one on the roads where you're not going to benefit me at all. And again, I'm being told I benefit through the county. But in reality, if you think about it, I use 200, 491, 44, and 41. Other than when I come here to this place, I'm not on roads that are maintained. I'm not on roads that are going to see stormwater drain improvements, and definitely not going to see it in my neighborhood. But one of the things that I've been hearing is you can't put it up on the ballot because there's not enough time. I have a suggestion. Put it on the ballot, sales tax or MSB or MBB, whatever that thing is. You know, give the people a choice, and I'm sure you're going to find out that all the people who live on unincorporated roads are going to be in favor of it. And maybe things can pass easier than you think they can. Anyways, enough of my time, enough of yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anyone else to address the board at this time? Anyone else? Okay, we'll close public input. Commissioners, they want to respond. I'll just quickly say, from the gas tax concept, when somebody said only 50% is going to roads, that's right, because we're paying for things called 491 and 486, and every dime that comes in from gas tax cannot go to road resurfacing. So one of the things that we've talked about in the past is that perhaps when those bonds are paid off, and we've had this discussion as well, that money can be reallocated, but you can't walk away from what previous boards have done and the obligations they've made for the county. So I don't think it'd be any more black and white. People always say, oh, you're hiding the money. It's right there in black and white where it goes. It might not be the percentage that people want, but that's what it is, and that's where it goes. So that was my only comment. Anybody else have anything to say?
I was going to say that.
Okay. Mr. Slaba, anything?
Janet, I will try to push it from now on. I did not get the consensus for getting it on the November ballot. I think it's a positive thing, but I have to defer to the knowledge up here and the experience, and we'll just move forward and try harder. The Pine Ridge. I appreciate all the knowledge that you're putting into this, and again, we're going to figure this out, and hopefully we can get some density into there. But I agree with everything you're saying, and Frank, I'm kind of in the same boat you are. I'm on a private road, and take care of the road, but so I'm not going to say I'm against the MSBU, but I'm not for it as of right now, so. But we have to figure out a solution. But thank you all for coming and sitting through this. I thought it was very educational for me, so I'm sure everybody got something out of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis, any comments?
That's, Frank, that's why I said, to anybody that lives on a road that's not county maintained, I would be for an MSBU as long as they were excluded from that. Then with ensuing discussion, perhaps that's not considered the quote-unquote fair way to do it. It would be a reduced amount. Whatever it is, we'll take a look at it and we'll figure it out then. But just know that I was thinking of your neighborhood when I made that statement. So in terms of the density allocation, the way this has been explained over and over again is that the bucket goes 7 to 10, and then we rank it based on density. So a road with 10 homes goes above a road with 9 homes. However, based on the fact that we're not doing Pine Ridge and Citrus Springs, that has to be a number of roads per mile, or number of houses per mile, not number of houses per road, right? So if it was number of houses per road, then the actual lot sizes would not matter, I don't believe. So maybe it's something like that it's, am I getting tangled? Okay, well. No, if you take, anyway, if you take a road where every single lot is built on, that's fully built out, right? But it could be 3 miles long with 10 houses, right? You could take a road that is a mile long, but it has much tinier lots, and it could have half the houses and be a higher density than the one that's longer. That's what I'm trying to say, okay? So I do think we need to look at this.
Anything else? Commissioner Kennard, any comments? No, thank you. Yeah, okay, well, I'll just finish up by saying again, thank you folks for being here today. Great data, great information. I love people that get up and present facts and data, like the folks particularly here from Pine Ridge today. But we started us off by saying what we all know, and that is whatever formula we have right now minus full funding, no one's going to be happy with. So, and there's all kinds of other, somebody talked about the nuances of it. I can tell you in bigger counties, there's other things that have to weigh into the factor. There's this thing they call equity. Dealing with social equity that has to be dealt with these factors too. So there's all kinds of, what people think is fair or whatever. I think the answer to all this is going to be, and we said this before, and I know people don't like hearing it, but if you don't remember the past, you're doomed to repeat it, right? 7.5 years ago, the county was spending nothing, zero, on county road resurfacing, right, Commissioner Carnegie? And this is how we're in a backlog today, because all that time there was no money being spent. Okay, it was all going into these special projects that were trying to be done, and people were very upset. They wanted to know, where's the money going? So we started road resurfacing. We started putting money into it. So granted, we're not going to catch up for years of unfunding overnight, but I do believe, and again, nobody likes to wait, but there is unintended consequences for moving in a haphazardly manner, just trying to make one group of people happy at the expense of other groups of people. So we're just trying to come up with the best bet, that we can for what we have, and I think we've addressed it today, and that is funding. Once we identify a dedicated funding source, it's going to be much, much easier to deal with the formulas. And I'm sure as we find out what our funding source is going to be and what that amount is, you will see the formula change based on that. I personally think there's something to be said about the abandonment phase. I mean, if it was up to me to put money now into something that people are using as compared to something that people aren't using, I would be putting the money into what people are using. But we have to take everything into consideration and all the factors, and that's what's going to be interesting about the MSBU. Are we going to be restricted in that use as the way they are in Citrus Springs now? So that's going to be interesting to see. So With that said, this is what workshops are for, is to have a detailed breakdown of what the issues are, try to get everybody on the same page moving forward. And again, everything you heard today, I think we have a good battle plan. Keep in mind, all that may change in November. Everything we talked about today may go out the window in November, and this might be a start over again. So we'll see. Mr. Oliver.
Yes, I'd like to dispel one thing that was said because it's inaccurate. Tourist development tax cannot be used for roads. There are some provisions in that statute, and I believe that you have to collect at least 10 million a year before you can use it for certain things. But it is contrary to law to use that for road resurfacing.
Right, and again, even, and I didn't even want to go down this road, but, no pun intended, so yeah, it just came out. But, there's, everybody always goes to the TDC. We can get money from the TDC for this or that or whatever. I would suggest you look at what the legislature says, what TDCs can do before you approach the TDC. That's my only concept or comment on it, is find out what can be done legally with TDC money before you put together a plan and just to go ask for money. Commissioners, I think we've exhausted this subject, at least for another day, but as unlike our other meetings, I feel we actually accomplished something today and we're moving in the right direction. Final comments, final words, anything, anybody? Okay, well, we're going to adjourn. We have, our next meeting will be our regular commission meeting that'll begin at 1 o'clock today, and so this workshop is adjourned.